Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. With a copy of the Constitution of Bharat in hand, Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami entered the State Assembly and tabled the much-awaited and touted Uniform Civil Code Bill, making Uttarakhand the first state in Bharat to do so. Goa does have UCC in place, but it's just a carry forward of the legacy from the colonial rule, ladies and gentlemen. So, in independent Bharat, for a country, for a state to actually table a bill, this perhaps is the first instance. The Treasury benches welcomed the tabling of the bill with the thumping of desks and chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai and Vande Mataram. The 192-page bill will be the first such legislation to be implemented in any state post-independence. The Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code Bill proposes a common law on marriage, divorce, land, property and inheritance for all citizens of the state irrespective of their religion. It stipulates registration of live-in relationships in the state and polygamy has been criminalized. The bill has exempted tribal communities and other BJP-ruled states, meanwhile, are starting to take a cue. They are mulling implementation of the UCC and discussions on the same are currently underway. So it is clearly just the aspect of it being passed. It's 192 pages, so they have wanted time to read through it, maybe overnight, and midweek, that's on Wednesday, we may just see passage of this bill in the state of Uttarakhand and in its assembly.
समान नागरिक संहिता उत्तराखंड विधेयक 2024 को पुनर्स्थापित करने हेतु सदन की अनुज्ञा चाहता हूँ।
राष्ट्र यह है कि समान नागरिक संहिता उत्तराखंड व्यवहार का
यूसीसी लाने का वादा किया हुआ है देश की जनता से। भाजपा का विचार का मुद्दा है और आज उत्तराखंड यानी देवभूमि से शुरुआत हुई है
और हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि पहले नंबर पे उत्तराखंड आ गए तो दूसरे नंबर पर राजस्थान आए।
उन्होंने बहुत चतुराई से अपना भाजपा के अंदर स्थान बनाने के लिए इस यूसीसी का उपयोग किया।
They can implement it in BJP ruled state. It will not happen in West Bengal.
The unemployment, joblessness, hunger and the rural distress is widespread in the country. So they want to divert people's attention from these real issues.
There are Hindus too who are going to get affected of the joint families and other.
Before we go across to our guests, just some highlights, some important points from this UCC draft. One of the aspects is how does marriage get defined? Marriage is defined or termed as marriage when a male has completed 21 years and a female 18 years. Neither party has more than one spouse, so once again polygamy is done away with, and compulsory registration within 60 days. Register all marriages post the 26th of March 2010. This has to be done. A maximum fine of 20,000 rupees for not registering marriages. Same-sex marriages are not allowed. As per the UCC draft, same-sex marriage is not allowed, and you've got to register all weddings that have taken place since the 26th of March 2010. Now, polygamy. It's been criminalized and the wife, the female, can seek divorce on grounds of polygamy. So that's been allowed. As far as live-in relationship, partners will have to submit a statement to the registrar. The statement has to be sent to the local police station and parents have to be informed if a partner is less than 21 years. If either of the partners is less than 21 years, a live-in relationship, the parents have to be informed. Only then In this construct, will it be deemed a live-in relationship, or can any kind of legal reprisal or recourse be sought on the grounds of a live-in relationship? Let's go across to our guests and understand, is this the correct template, and will the rest of Bharat follow? As we introduce our guest this evening on the right stand, let me also tell our viewers that we've had Hemant Biswa Sarma talk about it and say we will discuss it in this session and bring it in the next session. The Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister has indicated that they want to do it. In Rajasthan, they have indicated that they want to be the first state post Uttarakhand to bring in UCC. So that's the mood currently. Charu Pragya, national spokesperson of the BJP, is with us. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author and commentator, with us. Amna Begum Ansari, policy analyst, with us, and Tehseen Punawala, political analyst, with us. Namaste, Jai Hind to the ladies and the gentlemen on the panel. Thank you very, very much. Dr. Ranganathan, your first thoughts on this. Is this the right template? 192 pages, summary is doing the rounds. Have you had a chance to peruse it? Do you think this is the right template?
Good evening, Anand, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Look, a uniform civil code, or the UCC, I believe firmly, is not just a necessity for India. It's a prerequisite for India's unity. Anand, religious fanatics may have held to ransom a generation previous to ours through partition. They may have held to ransom our generation through Shah Bano. But we will not allow them to hold to ransom our future generations. We have to say no to religious fanatics. Enough is enough. There are broadly 4 issues here, and I'd like to delve into them briefly. Number 1, on the pretext of diversity, one cannot allow discrimination to flourish, and that is what has been happening. Just one example. Supreme Court, Anand, recently conferred Hindu daughters with equal rights to fathers' properties going back to 1947, saying, quote, Hindu texts recognize female rights, unquote. But in India, because of the verse 411, a Muslim daughter is entitled to only half of what a son is. Does this not bother our activists and those fighting for women's rights? Is this not discrimination? For how long will you make Muslim women suffer discrimination by shrouding them in this burqa of diversity? 2, there already is a uniform civil code applicable in Goa for decades. Goa has a minority population of 38%. Tell me, are the minorities in Goa suffering or being discriminated against because of the uniform civil code? On the contrary, they seem very happy to me. 3, the UCC is enshrined in our constitution under the directive principles. Dr. Ambedkar was an active proponent of it. He rejected amendments of exceptionality by Muslim legislators to Article 35, which is now 44, that asks for the UCC to be implemented. Quote, I personally do not understand why religion should be given this vast, expansive jurisdiction so as to cover the whole of life and to prevent the legislature from encroaching upon that field. After all, what are we having this liberty for? We are having this liberty in order to reform our social system, which is so full of iniquities, discrimination and other things which conflict with our fundamental rights, unquote. Besides, the UCC has been ordered to be implemented on more than one occasion by courts, most famously in the Shah Bano case. Quote, a common civil code will help the cause of national integration by removing disparate loyalties to laws which have conflicting ideologies, unquote. Ambedkar ki nahi sunni, Supreme Court ki nahi sunni, Constitution ki nahi sunni, but Sharia ki sunni hai. And by the way, for bringing in social reforms and equality to Hindu society, the Congress gladly brought in the Hindu code bills, but covered away like a wet cat when it came to reforming Muslim society. I repeat, I am against any law or code that discriminates between gender, sex, caste, creed, religious denomination, communities or groups. 4, above everything, Anand, there is this pursuit of a law or a code that begets what I call universal good, that is just, equal and based on science. Only then can societies progress. We have seen this time and again. The abortion limit has been decided by science and it has changed over years. Was that not warranted? Infant vaccination, contraception, prohibited in many societies. Was that not warranted? Similarly, science tells us that marriage of a woman upon puberty, sanctioned in Islam, demanded by AMPLB and ratified by Indian code, irreversible physical and mental damage to the woman's body. Should we continue to cause damage in the name of diversity? You want to continue to marry Indian girl child because your community has been doing so, while every other community in India has to follow the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. Is that pro-woman? Finally, just 30 seconds, Anand. I think it is wrong that the tribal community has been exempted from the Uttarakhand UCC draft, because then by definition it is not uniform civil code. If you want to eradicate discrimination uniformly, polygamy, child marriage, inheritance, then how can you exempt one community? It makes a mockery of your concern about social evils. Additionally, exempting one community will give an excuse to other communities to continue with the discrimination. As I said, just 10 seconds, if the purpose of the UCC is to eradicate discrimination and unify us, then it has to be applied universally and uniform.
Tehseen Poonawala?
Jai Hind, Jai Pakistan.
Your thoughts? I'll speak less, you people speak more.
Thank you.
So go ahead.
No, thank you so much. First of all, I completely agree that the UCC has nothing to do with Muslims. So when the word Sharia is used, or when the word, and I see a lot of Muslim MPs protest, I don't understand why they have to protest. I am for the UCC. Please bring in the UCC. Muslims, I don't know why they have to stand up and protest against the UCC. Perhaps because they want to help the BJP win election, be it OAC or be it the Samajwadi Party, Muslim MPs who are standing up and creating this rift in society. But the fact of the matter remains this, that UCCs, this is not the first time UCC has been brought into this country. Goa already has a UCC, as my worthy panelist Dr. A Ranganathan said it. And in Goa and the UCC, a Hindu male above the age of 30 can remarry if he does not have a male child. And Pramod Sawantji, the current Chief Minister of Goa, speaking to CNN News 18, said there is no need to change that law in Goa. This is not the UCC, this is the Uttarakhand Civil Code. And an entire population, the tribals, has been kept out. Even the UCC that they're dreaming to bring in on the national level for India, they want to make an exception for tribals. Then how is it the UCC? It's the Uttarakhand Civil Code. Point number 2, I'm quoting Anand, he said most changes happen and should happen based on science, and I completely agree with it. Anand, as you know, both the Anands, Charu and Amna, being in a same-sex relationship has been sanctioned by the Honorable Supreme Court. Why has that been discriminated in the live-in relationships? I absolutely don't understand. Why should they not be registered? Now, let's come to the third part. In the state of Gujarat, from where the Honorable Prime Minister and Home Minister hail, there is something called Maitri Karar, where a man can have a girlfriend officially, despite having a wife, on record. Why is this not going to be eliminated? Come back to the state of Uttarakhand. We now have the government in our bedrooms, on our beds, to register live-in marriages. Not only is this dangerous, this is absolutely undemocratic. I'm sure the courts will strike it down. But for a government to even comprehend something like this makes you shudder to think at what level does this government go. Now you're going to have relationships that need government sanction. What if somebody is in a casual relationship? What if somebody is just in a sexual relationship but not in a live-in relationship? What if somebody is in a live-in relationship but not in a sexual relationship? What if the woman is in a polygamous relationship? What if the woman has multiple partners and does not want to settle down with one partner? Who is the government to get into people's bed? What if somebody is in a situationship and not in a relationship? For the government to come down and to get into people's beds, I think is horrendous. For this to even be considered by the BJP is scary. The only other there is no democratic country that I know about it, but the only other country that I know allows it is Saudi Arabia and Iran, that has such kind of moral policing. We are fast heading down that spiral. Well, we are heading down the way of Saudi Arabia and Iran, and that I think is extremely dangerous, where you have moral police force.
Okay, Charu Pragya. Well, Dr. Ranganathan, you have to yield. Let everybody make a comment, then I'll come back to you, sir. Yes, Charu Pragya, respond.
Because Tehseen is talking about the government getting into people's beds. Is it okay for Halala to continue? Isn't that an external person getting into a woman's bed? Don't you agree? And if Halala is being struck down, what is the problem? This, Anand, is the biggest step of Modi 2.0, and it is going to put a big tick mark against our 3-point checklist since the inception of our party before Modi 3.0. And I am very happy. It had to begin somewhere. I am glad it is beginning in Uttarakhand. Those who say this is about religion, let me tell them this is more about protecting women and children. It's less about religion. It is more about being concerned that a 12-year-old child can get married and a high court in this country cannot do much about it because the Muslim personal law allows it. This is about two children growing up together and one having the privilege to study till the age of 18, till the age of 21, and the other does not have that privilege. And everything that is written down in the code, the Uniform Civil Code, is extremely important, because a society cannot progress in isolation. Do you want to keep different communities in isolated silos? How is the country going to progress if we do that? They will not understand each other. Also, in one country, you cannot have separate laws which govern the same set of people. You cannot have it both ways. And if the Sharia law is so important to you, why not follow Sharia law to a T and get your hand cut off for even theft? So this convenient stand, which I'm ashamed to say men take. How many women will object to this? I can't think of many, unless it is for political reasons. But this convenient stand that men have continued to take needs to go. Uniform Civil Code is the simplest thing that we are talking about. All children should be allowed to get married at the same age. Every child being born in a family should have equal rights on their parents' resources and wealth. Every single woman should be married to one person and one person alone. And lastly, Tehseen, because you were talking about live-in relationships, let's accept one reality of society today. Live-in relationships exist, whether you like them or not. There are children which could be born from these live-in relationships. Those children need to have rights. Who's going to give them these rights? We need a law taking which these children can be protected. And I actually also want to remind you that the panel, which was led by a former judge of the Supreme Court, actually engaged with over 80,000 stakeholders in the country. 80,000. They have more than 2.33 lakh written suggestions and pieces of feedback which they have incorporated in a 750-page report. This has not happened overnight. It has taken a lot of work. It has taken consensus, and we have come to a point where India is going to become truly secular in the days to come.
In terms of getting into anybody's homes or into anybody's bed, etc., if there has to be any legal recourse sought for somebody who's not in marriage, who's not in a contract, marriage is actually a contract between two people, and if that but there has been a consistent staying together or live in, then on what grounds will somebody consider this unless it is registered and informed to the local police and with the registrar and there is a record of the same? That's one of the aspects that it gets documented. There is nothing, there is no fight about that. What if everybody can ask, what if nobody is getting into deciding on anybody's judgment of what kind of an equation you have with a partner? But if you are getting into an engagement which is beyond a certain term and both sides believe that they would want a certain level of legal recourse despite not being in a contractual engagement with each other, this act is actually providing for that. That's the simpler way of explaining what you tried to set up there, Tehseen. I'll come back to you in just a minute.
That's wrong, Anand.
You may agree to disagree with me, or you may disagree with me. I'll come back to you. Let Amana Begum Ansari also speak about this. This is not focusing only on the Muslim groups or Muslims community, Charu, Pragya ji. Among Hindus, among non-Muslim, non-Hindu religious groups also, there are a lot of practices which now will get streamlined, and this will actually help those who get into special marriages, that is intercaste, intercommunity, etc. Because there is one common law for all. One cannot hide behind your caste, subcaste, community, subcommunity, personal laws and try and use that as a shield against what is the legal framework. Amana Begum Ansari.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that I'm very delighted to hear this news, that this is like, for me, dreams come true, because I have been vocal for very long. It's been 10 years fighting for the UCC, because I know this is the only way when women of Muslim community will get treated equally, because I believe we have been getting the second-class citizen of treatment within the Muslim community. However, there has been, I'm still skeptical of few things, because I do not know that what is the rule about halala, how that would be criminalized, and what is the status of divorce right, because still men have the rights to divorce the women. It's unilateral. So those are the things I would like to see the more work government putting on more effort on it. So I don't have much to say. Basically, I have been fighting for this for very long, and I think.
But don't you think, Amna ji, when it comes to marriage and divorce and inheritance and land, those 5 aspects will get, and death. So all of this gets covered under it. So divorce laws will be the same as per the personal laws will not come into play. Won't it be the Special Marriages Act or the as codified the divorce law? Why will there be any ambiguity when UCC comes into place? All other personal laws get scrapped.
If there is a rule that you cannot divorce women by giving the talaq and you have to go through the proper legal process, yes, then it will happen for the women, also Muslim women. Otherwise, the right will still remain with the men, because they can divorce, because it's written that you can still follow your own rituals. So if you talk about the rituals of the Muslim to get divorce, you can just unilaterally divorce the women. So that's the one aspect I want to see. Some clarity there.
For our research team, just to clarify this, and Charu Pragya is a lawyer herself, says he understands law. The laws that UCC will replace, whether it in Uttarakhand or across the country, these are the laws, and let's try and call that up if we can. The Hindu Disposition of Property Act 1916 gets replaced. The Hindu Marriage Act 1965 gets replaced. The Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956 gets replaced. The Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act 1956 gets replaced. The Hindu Succession Act 1956 gets replaced. As for among the Muslims, the Musalman Waqf Act 1923 gets replaced. The Muslim Personal Law Shariat Application Act 1937 gets replaced. So by default then halala, khula, all of that instant talaq or teen talaq, all of that goes out. Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939 gets replaced. Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Divorce Act 1986, that also gets replaced by this act. Now for Christians, the Indian Divorce Act 1869, the Indian Christian Marriage Act 1872, the Indian Succession Act 1925 and the Marriage Dissolution Act 1936. All of these get replaced. They don't apply. What applies is the Uniform Civil Code, Amna ji. Yes, please.
Okay, but one thing I want to add, even you cannot replace the halala practice, you have to criminalize it, because people will still practice it. Like you can make the rule that children marriage is not allowed, but you have to put certain kind of punishment on that. So that's what I'm talking about, that we have to work a little bit more. But overall, I'm so happy that I am seeing this day, and as an Indian Muslim woman, I feel like I am not the stepdaughter of the nation. That's I want to say.
Charuji, Dr. Ranganathan coming to you. Charuji wanted to clarify on halala. Yeah.
Just interjecting.
Halala I want to
is
clarify something.
punishable up to 3 years of a jail term and a fine of up to 2 lakhs or both. So halala is going to be punishable with 3 years in jail. It is already criminalized.
So 3 years in jail, fine of up to 2 lakhs or both. So that's what the draft says about halala. Dr. Ranganathan and then Tehseen Poonawalla. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan.
Very, very briefly, all the 3 other panelists have made excellent points, especially Amana ji. I have 2 points to make. I think my brother Tehseen is walking down a very dangerous path when he says that the government has no role to play in the bedroom. I'll give you just a couple of examples. Number 1, if what he says is true, then should the government not intervene on blatantly misogynistic, patriarchal and discriminatory practice like halala? Number 1, and for everyone's information, that is quote unquote consenting adults participating in halala. That is absolutely repugnant and misogynistic. Does the government has no role in banning that? Number 2, if we are not talking of consenting adults, does the government have no role in banning child marriages that are still allowed in some religions, through some religions, and vindicated by none other than the high courts of this country? So the government has a role. And I'm not saying that the government should, be a peeping Tom at all times and intervene when it is not required. But in some clearly misogynistic criminal practices, and also when consenting adults are not required, are not participating, the governments have a role. Number 2, and this is very important as far as Charu is concerned. Charu, if it is a uniform civil code and all of us are lauding its application, can I please ask you as a BJP representative, what uniformity would be left if you have exempted a huge chunk of the Uttarakhand population from it? Is that not wrong?
See, and let me just put an addendum there, Charu Pragya, before you answer this, and then Tehseen, I'll give you your final 2 minutes. That's a promise before we wind up the debate. The fact is that among these tribes, If these tribes then convert their religion and become Muslims, become Christians, become some other religion than their native faiths, what happens then? Because you've exempted them tribes. They continue to remain tribes, but they may change their faith. Then what happens?
So, Anand, I wish I had the answer to that, and probably that's a grey area which the government will give us more clarification on in the times to come. The bill has been tabled, that's a beginning, and the reason for removing the tribes from this is that we are trying to protect the way the indigenous tribes of this country have been functioning, whether in Uttarakhand or in the northeast or in any other part of the country. I do understand your concern that if it is uniform, it has to be uniform throughout. Absolutely, sir. And certain things cannot change. It doesn't matter what section of society you are from. I stand with you on that. But let me assure you of one thing. When the Modi government talks of bringing in uniform civil code, it is done with the intention of giving equal dignity and equal rights to every section of society. And most of all, the women who have felt like a stepdaughter, like Amna ji said.
No, here is the thing. It just needs one line. Tribes, as long as they continue to practice their indigenous ways,
practices.
that's when they are tribes, and then they are continue to be indigenous. The moment they convert, the moment they move and leave their indigenous ways and their indigenous practices, then they cease to be seen as tribes. That needs to,
I believe.
That needs to be the condition, because that's when it applies to the northeast. That's when it applies to everywhere else. They cannot continue to claim to be indigenous tribes while they've changed their ways, their paths, their faith, everything, and they've shed their indigenous practices, but continue to call themselves indigenous. That is something that needs to be considered, as Dr. Ranganathan said. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan, and then Tehseen Punawalla.
Very briefly, the attempt of UCC to bring in UCC is to remove discrimination and social evils. Now, I ask you, if an indigenous tribe practices polygamy and you exempt that indigenous tribe from the UCC, are you not continuing with the social evil? It's a simple question.
That also needs to be considered. Tehseen Punawalla, I'm running out of time. Yes.
So, one thing that everyone's been saying, one law, one country, from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Nagaland to Gujarat, for marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption, and death already exists, the Special Marriage Act. I got married under that act, and you could be of any religion, two Muslims, two Hindus, Muslim, Hindu, Brahmin, Dalit, as long as you're married under that act applies across the length and breadth of this country. Now, when I say it's very dangerous for the government to be in your bed, I stand by it. I of course think Halala should go, and I congratulate Amna ji. She's been fighting for this. I think this is great. I am saying it is great. Halala should go. But the live-in relationship clause is mandatory, Anand, for it to be registered. Now imagine where somebody is in a situationship. They're not in a relationship, but the government wants you to register it. And even if you're 19, wants you to inform your parents about it. Who is the government to get into people's bedrooms? What if it's a polygamous girl? She's in a polygamous relationship. What if they are two?
Please understand.
Anand, please. This is very important. What if there are two people of the same sex and they are in a live-in relationship? Why is there no protection there? You're not even allowing them to live.
Because same-sex marriages are not recognized, because they have not yet been legalized in our country.
So dangerous.
Same-sex marriages have not yet been legalized in our country. They have not.
I'm not talking about marriage, Anand. Anand, listen.
Please understand. Please understand.
I'm talking about relationship.
Please understand. Hear me out. The fact is, if you seek legal recourse, if you are in a live-in relationship and then you are going to approach the court because you are in a live-in relationship for any dispute resolution as in a legal relationship, then that legal relationship will be considered, or that live-in relationship will be considered only if it is registered. You can choose not to register, sir. But if you
but the registration is mandatory.
If you choose not to register,
you're not understanding, Anand.
Sir, there is a particular period.
No, you can't do that,
sir. If you are in a let me just look at the highlights and call it out right now. As far as the live-in relationship,
I'm telling you this as a matter of fact.
As far as the live-in relationship is concerned, the partners have to submit their statement to the registrar. That is, if they decide to continue to stay on in a live-in relationship beyond a certain point, you have to declare it, because that's the only way you will get legal recourse. or you will
Why?
get protection by the law. Otherwise,
But
you will
just-
not get protection under the
One
law.
second.
That's
Anand.
all. Because,
If you
Anand,
because
just hold on.
the registrar
Anand.
needs to know if this is really a live-in couple or is it just somebody who's creating a figment of imagination
Anand, let me
overnight.
explain this to you.
So that's
Anand,
where
you-
that
Anand,
is
you
where
have
it
to
is.
allow
I
me
have
to
run out
explain
of
this to
time.
you.
I have run out of time. Let
No,
this
it's
matter.
not how it works. You're
We will
think-
talk about this more at length. I have run out of time for the moment. But as far as having it equally applicable to all, recognizing who are indigenous tribes and who are not, that is important. And certain practices, even indigenous tribes over a period of time, set that time limit, have to be encouraged to do away with in their own way, of their own volition, before the law becomes applicable on them. I think that those things need to be brought in there. I have to wind up on that. Thank you very, very much. Very engaging conversation, and we'll take this forward. Thank you very much. Dr. Ranganathan stays on with us, and of course you viewers have to stay on with us, because when we come back, Tehseen Poonawalla also stays on with us, because it's about the race to 24. 370 is a target the PM has set. Can they really get there? And how? We figure out what the numbers show us. Stay with us.